Um, just so everybody knows, we're going to record the first portion of this meeting, and that'll be my presentation. I'll be introducing the Center for Agroforestry, and then we'll have Audrey Schmidt introduce the Nature Conservancy and get into the nitty-gritty parts of this project. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, and we'll end recording before any questions that you all may have. So just to let you all know, and thank you all so much for joining this meeting. I hope it's informative, and I hope you learned something and come out with some inspiration to apply for this incentive program. So my name's Gina Beebe. I work here at the Center for Agroforestry in Columbia, Missouri. I am the education and outreach kind of coordinator for the Expanding Agroforestry project, which is what you all are here to learn about. So just a quick introduction about the Center for Agroforestry. We've been around for almost 30 years. We do a lot of research and outreach education on agroforestry in all sorts of different capacities. Just a really brief overview of our program. We have a number of different research programs. One that is very relevant to the Expanding Agroforestry project is the specialty tree and shrub crop development, which is really a genetics lab. Mizzou Nut Breeding Lab. Dr. Ron Revord is the faculty leading that. And we also have the Chestnut Improvement Network, which is underneath that, which is really a way to get chestnuts out to growers with improved genetics and really help people get that on the ground. We also have a silvopasture lab. Dr. Ashley Conway Anderson is the faculty there. Another amazing resource that we have here at the Center for Agroforestry that is, again, very relevant maybe to some of the projects that you all are interested in implementing on your land. We also have a lot of other things going on, bioremediation and phytochemistry, human health. We study riparian buffers, all sorts of other things. We have 8 different research farms located throughout the state of Missouri. The one that we interact with probably the most is the Horticulture and Agricultural Research Farm, which used to be formerly known as the Research Center, HARC. Maybe some of you are familiar with that. And we do a lot of applied and long-term research there. And so that's just out near Boonville, just west of Columbia by about 30 miles. And we also have a pretty extensive graduate program here at the Center for Agroforestry. So we have a master's degree, as well as an online graduate certification. We're the only agroforestry degree program offered in the United States. So pretty amazing. We have a pretty robust number of master's students. We also have PhD students enrolled in our program too. So that's just a little bit about us. And more recently, we were the recipient of this grant to help you all establish agroforestry practices on your land. And so we're really moving into more of an extension kind of arm of natural resources. And we're very excited to talk to you all. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Audrey Schmidt, who is the agroforestry program manager for the Nature Conservancy, and really like the manager, just like, you know, the front and center of the Expanding Agroforestry project, and a real master of what's going on. And we're so excited that she's able to be here. So thank you all. And thanks, Audrey.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just screen share quickly. Hang on. Let's see. How's that? You guys seeing that all right? Okay. All right. Well, really excited to be here today. Thank you all. And thanks to those watching the recording later. So as Gina said, I'm Audrey Schmidt. I work at the Nature Conservancy as part of the North America Agriculture team. And we are sort of the lead organizer for the Expanding Agroforestry project, but we work closely with many, many partners, importantly Mizzou, who's helping us lead in the lower Midwest. And this Expanding Agroforestry project comes from funding from the USDA. So just a little bit of background on where does all this funding come from? It's part of Secretary Vilsack sort of unlocked some funding from the Commodity Credit Corporation, and that bucket of funding from USDA is used to help aid the expansion of domestically produced products. So it's really exciting to use that resource and those resources for helping to move the needle on more climate smart production of agricultural goods in the US. So ultimately, $3.1 billion is going to 141 different projects across the United States. And our project is a $60 million project, a part of that larger $3.1 billion effort. So I'll be quick to say we are one project, and there are many others in case there's other climate smart practices that you're interested in for your operation. I know University of Missouri also has the Circle project as part of climate smart commodities program. So definitely check that out as well to see if that's a good fit for your operation. So quick background on agroforestry. So USDA has 5 recognized agroforestry practices. Those are alley cropping, which is putting trees in row with either perennial or annual crops; windbreak, strategically placing trees to attenuate or slow down any wind pressure on a farm; silvopasture is putting trees in kind of in grazing scenarios. And then riparian buffers, putting trees along waterways. And then forest farming is the production of different botanicals like ramps or blue cohosh in a forest setting. So for our project, we're really focused on really promoting 3 types of agroforestry. So that's alley cropping, windbreaks, and silvopasture. And part of that story is really figuring out how can we do large scale, profitable examples of agroforestry here in the US. And so those are the 3 practices that we thought needed a little bit of an Luckily, riparian buffers already benefit from different water quality programs that support their establishment. These 3, we really thought, okay, here's a moment where we can leverage this funding to get more examples of these 3 types. A quick note on silvopasture that I just want to name. For this project, we're really focused on what's called additive silvopasture. So that's putting trees into existing pasture or grazing systems. We're not so much looking at what's sometimes called subtractive silvopasture or woodlot conversion to grazing. And that just has to do with the fact of this funding's really focused on the climate benefits, and really putting that new biomass of trees into pastures is what we're focused on for this project. And why agroforestry? So if you guys are new to agroforestry, it's a really fun place to be because there's so many co-benefits, and it really speaks to a lot of different audiences. One of the parts of this project that we'll be really emphasizing frequently is the opportunities around rural development, increasing financial resiliency for individual farm operations, coupled with, of course, the climate story of the huge carbon sequestration potential that can come from agroforestry when it's adopted at a larger scale than we see today. Because today, there's a survey that was done by USDA back in 2017 that said that only 2% of farm operations in the US currently use any of those agroforestry practices. So there's a huge opportunity to help scale this and have more examples across the US. So that is where the Expanding Agroforestry project comes in. And so our goal is to get 30,000 new acres of agroforestry planted over the next 5 years. And we are operating across 30 different states. Mizzou is, of course, helping us in the lower Midwest, which are these 4 states: Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And really appreciative to have that kind of localized knowledge to help, us at TNC. Our role is helping doing the large scale grants administration, being the, puppeteer or something in the background, helping make sure all the pieces move together. But ultimately, none of it's possible without localized knowledge. And so really thankful for our regional leads for playing that role. I should also note for TNC's role, we are helping to lead on MMRV as well as processing payments. So I'll explain that more in just a second. So we kind of have 5 major buckets of work for this project. First piece is outreach, recruitment, and awareness building. As I just said, about 2% of US farms operations currently have any agroforestry practices on them. That means it's not normalized yet, right? Agroforestry is not yet totally common for people to be practicing as a conservation practice for their farm. Huge opportunity to build that out. So part of the work that we'll be doing is building that awareness, getting farmers educated on what those opportunities could be, really thinking about what makes sense for their particular operation. And I think what's important to note is there are going to be producers that we reach at education events like today or on-farm field days who might not plant a single tree during the 5 years of this project. And that's okay, because it might take them a little while, but maybe in year 7 or year 12, that's when they're putting trees in. It's part of that work that we all have to do to normalize agroforestry. And I'll just say, I know, looking at this adoption curve, you all might be familiar with this chart. We know that we've got innovators who are rearing to go, ready to apply to our incentive payment program and get trees in the ground yesterday. And we've got other folks who need a little bit more convincing, that early majority, even some of those later early adopters. So we're aware of kind of where agroforestry is at today, and that this is early work that we have to do. So our incentive payment program, the second bucket, is really focused on helping farmers with one of the most common hurdles that you hear about people saying, I'm not sure I want to adopt agroforestry, is because of how capital intensive it is to get those systems in the ground, coupled with uncertainty about how they should do that for their own operation. So that's why we designed our incentive payment program to both alleviate those financial barriers, as well as couple producers with technical assistance from staff at different organizations that can help create those solutions for their particular operation. And all of that is with an aim to get more agroforestry demonstration farms across the US. I could talk till I'm blue in the face on as many Zoom calls as possible, but ultimately producers want to hear directly from another producer, right? They want to go to somebody's farm. They want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. We know that that's one of the strongest ways that we can help increase adoption of any agricultural practice, but definitely with something like agroforestry, seeing is really believing. So we need more demonstration sites, more proof points in as many locations as possible. So that's a major part of the Expanding Agroforestry project. The next bucket is measurement, monitoring, reporting, and verification, otherwise known as MMRV. So I'll probably just call it MMRV going forward. And this is really making sure that we are doing the necessary data collection to understand the impact of, are all of these dollars leading to the outcomes that we want? And so we have some pretty robust, USDA has some pretty robust requirements around reporting. And so that's part of what the MMRV process is. So we'll be looking at understanding the biomass of the growing trees that we put in, as well as the carbon in the soil that we onto these operations. The final bucket is enabling conditions. So as I said, agroforestry, right? It's sort of up and coming. It's at a nascent stage. It's growing. And so there's a lot of enabling conditions that we need to support if we want the long-term success of agroforestry systems for the long term. And part of that is very much market development. It's all fine and well to grow whatever agricultural crop, but if you don't have the right buyer at the right time at the right price, it's just not going to work for you for the long haul. So really figuring out how can we work with those end users so that that market is there when these crops come to maturity. There's a lot of work we need to do today so that we create those enabling conditions, those enabling market conditions in the future. Financing options. So we have funding today, obviously, to put trees in the ground thanks to this USDA funding, but we know that might not be here forever. So part of the work that we do is trying to create more private financing options, both philanthropic as well as more classic financing options. We know that other forms of agriculture, kind of your classic commodity crops, have a whole wide menu of financing options for operating loans that they can tap into. And a lot of those financing options aren't necessarily the right fit for agroforestry, given the given basically the time lag between putting the trees in the ground, incurring those costs, and when you actually see the revenues in years in the future when the crops come to maturity. So what can we do to help producers with those gap years? And how can we work with financiers to understand the needs of agroforestry producers so that they have a wider menu of financing options? Crop insurance is also really important. That's another part of de-risking agroforestry for producers. A lot of crops that are grown in agroforestry systems do not yet benefit from federal crop insurance. So we're working to do that. We're starting with chestnuts, and there's certainly others on that list that we'll be working on. And then finally, nursery capacity. None of this is possible unless you have the right quantity and quality of genetic stock. And so we have to work with our nursery industry partners so that they have the capacity they need to get us the right genetics in years ahead at the scale and quantities that we need. So supporting them is a key part of this project as well. So overall, it's a $60 million project, and 36 million, so about 60%, is direct to farmer incentive payments. It was really important to us that a majority of the funding of this award goes straight to producers. The other 40% is to help with partner capacity. So things like Mizzou having more staff to be able to do the good work of working with you all on technical assistance and getting the word out through outreach and education events, MMRV, and then of course the enabling conditions work that I just named. So again, 60% of the budget is going directly to producers, and that's really important to us. So of that 36 million, what is this incentive payment program, and what does it mean for me as a producer? So I'll try to walk through that. There's basically a sequencing that you go through as part of this program. So one of the first things that I always like to recommend to people is to sign up for our email listserv. So you kind of get into the queue and are aware of upcoming application cycles, as well as education and outreach events that might be a good fit for you. So you're welcome to join the email list that TNC manages, or go directly to Mizzou and join their email list. If you join the TNC one, we'll direct you off to Mizzou so that they can connect with you. Or if folks are listening in from other regions, whatever your particular regional lead is, we'll send you towards them. Ultimately, you have to apply for the program. And so there's about 2 to 3 application cycles, depending on the region. So I think folks from Mizzou are going to share more about that for the lower Midwest in just a second. And producers will hear back about their application typically within 3 to 4 months from putting in their application. We have a review process where we have a committee who looks at all the applications. We have scoring criteria to determine which are the projects that are most likely to be strong examples of showing for-profit agroforestry that's going to work for the long term and be great examples for other farms in that region. Once you're selected to join the program, that's when you get coupled with technical assistance staff from typically a regional lead organization. So Olga and Alan, who will talk next, they're examples of the types of folks that you'll basically get connected with, match made with, and they will hold your hand through the process, both through thinking through what the vision is for your operation, kind of what do you have today and what do you want in 20 years from now, and what type of agroforestry, cropping system, density, what makes sense for you and your goals that you have, and also to help support you through collecting the different eligibility documents that are needed. So for example, you need to be registered with the FSA, and so with the Farm Service Agency of USDA as part of being eligible for this program. So Olga and Alan and others can help walk you through collecting all of those required documents. Once you have your finalized design plus the required eligibility documents, that package gets sent to the Nature Conservancy, and that is when you are contracted for the incentive payment program. And that is and once you have signed that incentive payment program, once you've signed that contract for the incentive payment program, you have 18 months to get the trees in the ground. And we realize that there's a lot of procurement issues that can happen. And so that's why we wanted to give folks 18 months so that they are putting in the best quality genetics possible and getting whatever other procurement pieces that they need together, that they have the time to do that, and that they don't feel rushed. I'll also note, if folks aren't selected into the program back at the application stage, you are welcome. You'll get feedback on your application and you'll be welcome to apply in future application cycles. And I'll share just in a moment when you get paid. I'll share that that kind of payment schedule in just a second. But basically, once you put the trees in the ground, you'll either have a site visit or you'll take photos, and that'll help our team verify that you actually did the planting. Really important. Everything has to be done by NRCS conservation practice standards. And finally, in the last year of the program in 2028, that's when we need producers to take measurements of the trees. And basically that's taking DBH, diameter at breast height, of the trees and a subsample of all the trees planted. And once you have done that, that's when you get your final payment. So as I've kind of mentioned, demonstration farms are incredibly important. Folks at the application stage are welcome to elect to say, hey, I'm interested in being a demonstration farm. That's really helpful for us to know that you're willing to welcome people for things like field days up to once per year. Also importantly, while everybody has to do the required MMRV data collection, if you are interested in being a site to have scientists come out and do scientific research on your operation above and beyond the MMRV program, that's really helpful to us. We know that we have an amazing moment right now to collect baseline data and also do longitudinal long-term research beyond just the 5 years of this grant. And to have that list and that database of operations that are willing to have science inquiry done on their farm, that's incredibly helpful to our academic partners and others, so that we can really, again, build on our understanding of the impact and the opportunities of agroforestry. So the payment schedule, getting into the nitty-gritty here. So there are two major buckets of the incentive payment program. This first part is called Category 1. This category, you get the installation costs covered by this award funding, plus a transition incentive that's a per acre basis. The per tree install costs are determined at the time of receiving the technical assistance. And most projects are going to come in around $30 per tree. It can be between $20 to $100, but most projects are going to be about $30 per tree. Additionally, everybody will also get this transition incentive, which is $450 per acre, and that's paid out in 3 installments. One piece of it, this then going down here for the payment schedule, 70% of the per tree install costs will be paid out with that first payment, coupled with a third of the $450. So it's $150 per acre within 60 days of signing that contract with the Nature Conservancy. And it's really important for us here from a cash flow. We know other programs expect farmers to kind of do things on a reimbursement basis, and that can be really challenging. That's why having all that, as much cash upfront as possible to support producers was important for us from a design perspective. After you get the trees in the ground and you have verification with our staff, that's when you get 25% of that per tree install cost, plus the second $150 per acre. And then once you get that final data to us in 2028, that's when you get the final 5% plus $150 per acre. I just want to name something that's really important here. If you end up contracting with the Expanding Agroforestry project, it's really important that you are not getting paid by other NRCS programs for the same practices on the same acreage. That is not allowed. And so it's really important just to name that up front, that if you are pursuing it with us, you are also allowed to apply with NRCS for programs like EQIP, but you ultimately need to pick one or the other, or do those practices on very discrete different acreages on your operation. The second category of the incentive payment program provides that same transition incentive that you saw before, but in this instance with Category 2, producers are coming with the installation costs themselves. So this could be coming from a third-party financing. This could be coming from philanthropic sources. We're going to have an opportunity to support producers thinking through what some of those other options are for financing. And this is important to us so that we're building up that menu of options for the future beyond just the 5 years of this grant, so that there are more and more financing options available for farmers for the long-term sustainability of building out this industry for the long haul. And the payment schedule, pretty similar. It's 150 when you sign the contract. It's 150 per acre once you verify planting, and then the final 150 per acre is in 2028. Often get this question: minimum and maximum sizes. The minimum size is 5 acres in all of the regions, with the exception of Hawaii, which goes down to 1 acre. There's no minimum or floor for funding. It's really based on acreage. For the maximum, that is based on a dollar amount. And so that's $450K per entity that applies. So it's really important. That mirrors what EQIP has for 450, and folks can still apply for EQIP and get the 450. They're kind of separate. They're not the same. And there is no acreage maximum. Eligibility requirements. This is a lot of text on one slide, and there's more eligibility requirements. There's a frequently asked questions document that I highly recommend folks reading. Lays out a lot of these details here that I think would be helpful. But at a high level, folks need to be in one of the 30 eligible states. If you lease land, that is okay, and we want you applying to the program. We just need, at the time of entering an agreement with the Nature Conservancy, that you can show that you have control of the land through a lease through 2028. This is kind of the balance and threading the needle that we had to do to ensure that we had this program available to operators who lease, but ultimately we also need to ensure that that producer has control of the land through the end of the award period. If you obviously own your own land, that's an easier story, and you're of course eligible. Required paperwork. So as I kind of mentioned before, it's important that producers get certain required paperwork, including things like getting an approved CPA 52, being registered with FSA. So check out the FAQ document for more info on what those pieces are. But again, your technical service assistant staff are there to help hold your hand to support you through getting all of those documents together. Got to follow NRCS conservation practice standards, and you got to be willing to do the MMRV data collection, as I mentioned. Producers will be on the hook for helping to collect the DBH, the diameter at breast height for the trees. We have a contractor who will be coming in to collect soil samples on all of the sites, and you will have access to review and read the results of the soil tests that are collected on your land. So that's covered separately. You don't have to pay for that. And a really key part of this, we want to support underserved producers as a part of this project. That's a really important goal that we have for this. And so making this accessible and available and getting the word out is really important. So if I can ask all of you on the call today, if you know of underserved producers who might not be aware of this program, please spread the word, because we want as many applying and joining the program as possible. And for this particular program listed out here are some of the different kind of categories of underserved producers that are eligible in terms of the way that USDA categorizes underserved producers for this particular program. The online application, really quickly, it's an online application. Again, it's going to have application cycles 2 to 3 times per year, depending on your region. We really recommend folks putting in as many details as possible that they have about their project plans. And it's recommended too that if you're really kind of early in your journey thinking about agroforestry, don't feel like you have to rush and get your application in. Might make more sense to take the time, have conversations with your business partners, thinking through what's a robust plan for your particular operation. That's what we highly recommend for everyone. So as I said, please read the FAQ document. Kind of sped through some of these pieces, but that FAQ document's about 11 pages long and has a lot of the nitty-gritty details that you might be curious about. I know folks don't love reading, but that's a really good resource to get extra details. So that's available at nature.org/expanding agroforestry. And if you get through that document and your questions still you're not satisfied, you still have questions, please email expandingagroforestry@tnc.org and we can help answer that, and or of course reach out to the Mizzou staff. They can help answer your questions as well. Final piece, the Expanding Agroforestry project is just one of a growing and collective options of funding that we have in our toolbox for agroforestry. So there's other climate smart commodities grants that are also supporting agroforestry. For example, Mizzou with the Circle program, they are supporting silvopasture. NRCS has a increased and expanded bucket of funding from the Inflation Reduction Act. So NRCS can be a great option as well. And then again, working with different private donors and third-party financing that's also available beyond just this program. So with that, I would like to pass it over to Alan and Olga,